Okay, last time we were talking about supply and demand, and we went through the graphs, and we went through some of the analysis. I'll go through that briefly. But the first thing I want to cover today is the difference between, again, we put price on the vertical axis, quantity down here, our D, demand curve slope down, our supply curve slope upward. Where these two meet, it's a point that we call an equilibrium. Doing this on purpose, I wanted you to go ahead and get a full one in your notes, but I want to just focus on a demand curve right now. I want to just focus on a demand curve. Remember, we talked about at different places along this demand curve, we can have, we can sell at any point along this demand curve, depending on how we define our products, right? If we write up here cars at a relatively low price point, there could be a high quantity of cars sold. This could be the Ford Fusion, right? At a relatively low price point of about 20K, it's one of the best-selling cars in the country. It has a relatively low price point. It's one of the best-selling cars in the country. At 80K is my beloved Tesla Model S. My current infatuation. $80,000 versus $20,000. Dramatically fewer Teslas sold, right? Here we have lots far along the quantity line. Over here, relatively few. So anywhere along this demand curve, we can still have progress taking place, right? Commerce can take place at any point along here. What we're saying is, what we say with this example is, what if they were to lower the price of the Tesla? We can use this to think about, what if Tesla and Elon Musk were to come out next week and say, we're lowering the price. Maybe they have a new model coming in. Maybe they're going to make the Tesla like the iPhone. Put a new model out every 3 years and lower the price of the old one. I don't know. What if they lower the price of it to 60K? At that point, would we expect them to sell more or less? Okay, well, let's look. We go out to our existing demand curve. We see that this point is farther along. We would expect them to sell more. The law of demand still works. Demand curves still slope down. That would be a change along the demand curve. That would be a shift along a demand curve. We've moved from this point to this point. A move along the demand curve because we have changed what? What did we change in our example? We changed the price. A change in price, write this down with a star next to it, a change in price will cause a move along a demand curve or a supply curve. We'll deal with demand right now. But note, we're still on the same curve. We're still on the same demand schedule. We're still on the same bit of demand. A change in price has moved us along this demand curve. Let's model something different. I've chosen badly. Oh, I know, okay. We implement an annual road tax of $1,000. We implement an annual road tax of $1,000. Typically when I do this example, the change I make is that I double or triple the price of gas. But in this case, it's not going to be effective. It's going to alter this curve in unpredictable ways because this doesn't use gas. So that would be unpredictable. Instead, we'll say that we institute a $1,000 road tax per year. If you own a car and drive it on public roads, you owe us $1,000 right off the bat. It's $1,000 to buy your driver's license, let's say. Now we've changed something other than price. It's not the price of the car, the individual car. What we've done is we've made the act of driving itself more expensive, right? Less attractive. Now driving is a bit of a hazard. Now driving is a bit of a bother. What this will do is it will shift us to a whole new demand curve. This road tax will increase the demand for driving cars or decrease the demand for driving cars? Decrease the demand for driving cars. And we see that as our whole demand curve shifts down toward the origin. Now we see at the same, we didn't change the price of the Ford Fusion. We haven't changed the price of the car. Previously at $20,000, people bought lots of them, right? Now at $20,000, people will buy at this point. Not lots of them. This is less than this. This is closer to the origin. Instituting this road tax, even though the price of the Ford Fusion hasn't changed, fewer people want them. The same holds true for the Tesla here. At this price, I think there would be very few Teslas sold. This is a decrease in overall demand. What I've instituted in green is an overall decrease in demand or a shift in the demand curve. It has shifted to a new curve. For our road tax of $1,000. I rewrite it up here. I'm going to use this space for something else. This illustrates a decrease in demand. Squid ink, unusual product. Can you buy squid ink? Yes. Some cooks use it. I've known bartenders to use it to fancy up cocktails. The kinds of cocktails that I don't buy and drink. Squid ink. At a certain given price, call it P1, we sell a certain given quantity. If you're in this, the unfortunate person who is in the squid ink business. Lo and behold, there's a change in the market, and it turns out that squid ink prevents cancer. Not might prevent cancer, not could prevent cancer. Take the squid ink, not going to get cancer. Period. Increases or decreases demand?
Increases.
A little bit or a lot?
A lot.
A lot, right. How much squid ink do we want now?
Oh,
No, we want no squid ink right now. What's going to happen to the poor squid coming up very soon? Run for your life, squiddy. All right, things are going to happen. It will shift us to a new demand curve, which will shift outward away from the origin. Economics is easy, you only have to learn half of it. This is, of course, an increase in demand. Know the difference between a change in price, which results in a different position along the demand curve, and a change in anything else, which will result in a shift of the demand curve. A change in anything else, outside forces, will shift us to a new demand curve. This is saying at this price previously, the market wanted this much squid ink. Now that we find out that it cures cancer, it prevents cancer, we want a much greater quantity of squid ink. Did I just make this up? Has this never happened before? Fish oil, right? The fish oil tablets, omega-3 fatty acids. 15 years ago, you wouldn't see a bunch of people buying fish oil. Now they seem like these gallon jugs at Sam's. About 20 years ago, 60 Minutes released a study about how the French and Italians ate these huge high-fat diets. French food is all butter and cream sauces. The 4 master French sauces, which every chef learns to make his first year. The heavy, rich sauces and meats of Italy and France. But they have a very, very low incidence of heart failure. In America, we have monstrous rates of heart failure. It's the biggest killer in the U.S. is heart failure, congenital heart disease. The French and Italians have very low degrees of heart failure. And one of the things that they came up with, and they said this on 60 Minutes Sunday night in front of everybody, right after a big football game, they said one of the big reasons is because the French and Italians drink so much red wine. Oh my gosh. So people were like, wait. I can go and drink more wine. It's good for me, and it's going to prevent heart disease. And then it was on. A massive shift in the demand for red wine actually occurred, okay? Because of a show on 60 Minutes. Increased demand dramatically. It could be a change in tastes and preferences. People's tastes could change. Outside market forces could change. Fashion is one that I always like to point out, right? Kohl's is selling ridiculous hats shaped like fish. The bass, the bluegill, the crappie hat. They're selling at Kohl's and they're way back on the back shelf. Until Jennifer Lawrence shows up at her new movie premiere wearing a hat shaped like a bluegill. Now what's going to happen? Fish hats are all the rage. Fish hats on the cover of Us Weekly. People magazine declares fish hat the new must-have accessory. The demand curve will shift out dramatically for fish hats. What would we expect to happen to the price as a second order condition? It will go up dramatically. Next time we'll talk about how we can figure maybe how much it will go up. This is a first order condition. It's the first thing we consider to happen. If a news story is released that something prevents cancer, something is healthy, something is a positive that we didn't necessarily know, the first order condition, first thing that we happen, demand will shift out. People, when they get ahead of themselves, will invariably say, but once this happens, won't more people out there decide to stop fishing for lobster and start fishing for squid? Yes, absolutely. This increase in demand will cause an increase in supply. Yeah. Right, the increase in demand will drive up the price. That's a second order condition. We say that the supply increases because the demand has increased. And we'll get into that in more detail. But we talk about the difference in a shift in the whole curve and a move along the curve. A move along the curve is caused by a change in price. A shift to a new curve is caused by almost any other condition, almost any other outside condition. Let's look at some more examples of a price floor and a price ceiling or limit. Promised I would do this one again, so I will. Here's a demand curve and a supply curve at equilibrium. We're talking about wages. Currently the wage for a fast food worker, we will say, is $7.25. And in New Albany, there are 500 of them employed. The market will demand 500 fast food workers for our given area at this given wage. This is our starting condition. Next, we institute a new minimum wage. A minimum wage is a price floor. A minimum wage is a price floor. It says that we're putting it at $10. It's a price floor. Remember, this is a continuous axis, so here's $5, here's $2.50, here's 0. The price floor says, can you pay $12 if you want? Sure. Can you pay $10 if you want? Sure. Can you still pay 7 1/4? No. No. It's below the floor. No going below the price floor. Okay, before this instituted, we go out to our supply and demand and find our equilibrium, and we find that 500 people want to go out and work for that price. 500 people will be demanded by the industry. That's what they want to hire. We're at an equilibrium. All is right with the world. Once we institute this price, we go out and we see that now we have 2 points. What exceeds what? Supply exceeds demand. At this $10 wage price, our supply is farther right, farther away from the origin. Our supply exceeds our demand. This is where it crosses our supply graph. This is where it crosses our demand graph. Supply exceeds demand. What's the implication of that? We're talking about labor and wages. Supply is how many people are willing to work, right? Willing to supply labor. I want to work for $10 an hour. Demand is how many people, how many jobs there are. How many people want to hire someone for $10 an hour? What do we call these people? Unemployed. Unemployed. There's a surplus of laborers. There are people out there who want to and are willing to work and cannot find that job. A surplus of laborers. It just so happens that in labor, when we have this, we call it unemployment. You might have seen the South Park episode. I don't remember which one it is, with the Hummer dealership, the vehicle of the Hummer dealership, and there's like nobody's ever been there. I think Cartman hides something really valuable over there because like nobody ever goes there. And like they just sit on the lot, and like it's a huge joke that nobody's been there. Like there's one guy who's working there, just like, hey, hey. Nobody comes to buy him at all. They're all sitting there unwanted on the lot. What is there? A surplus of these. I can't think of another good example of surpluses right off the top of my head. A surplus of laborers. Setting this price floor has created a surplus of labor. This is an example of a price floor. Is this a good policy or a bad policy? That's a normative question. A positive question is, if we were to raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to $10 an hour, what would we expect to happen? We would expect that this number of people would want to work more than work now, but some number of people at that price, we'll call it 400, this is the number that will actually be employed. This is the number that will be demanded and hired by employers. Is this a good policy? Is this a good idea? It really depends. If you're one of these 400 people, there were 500 people working before we raised the minimum wage. Now there are 400. If you're one of those 400 people, did you think it was a good idea? Yeah, you're a happy person. Because you used to be making 7.25, now you're making 10 and you're doing the same job. You're a happy person. But there's 100 people in here who are not happy, are they? They are now what we call the unemployed. They are not happy. If we were to institute this, do you think that businesses would look around and take the young, the inexperienced, and decide they're the ones they want to keep on? Who's going to be the first to be among the 100? The youngest, the least experienced, the newest. We may have instituted a policy which has hurt the people that we most wanted to help. Now, some people are better off, don't get me wrong. 400 people having a great time. 100 people, and sometimes, traditionally, what we see is 100 of the lowest skilled, newest, youngest, often most minority workers find themselves not helped out very much at all. Do we see this happen? Absolutely. Of course we see this happen. Very standard economic view. Very well accepted. The only thing we really argue about is the scale. The only thing economists will argue about is the scale of how much this happens. Economists who argue for much higher minimum wages will tell you this number is very small. They'll tell you, well, yeah, this is going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen, but it's really small. Very few people actually lose their jobs. It really is very small effect. People who say, oh, you're not so sure that you should do this, believe that this effect is much bigger. And we'll get into the slope of these graphs and stuff more on Monday. I'll move on to another example. Again, we will do apartment rents, existing demand in the market, existing supply in the market. We're at a happy equilibrium point. Equilibrium rent for an apartment is $800, at which point 1,000 of them are rented. and we institute, in this case, instead of a price floor, a price ceiling. We say that $800 is just simply too much to pay for an apartment. It is too much. The rent is too damn high. And we institute by law at $600. Can you still charge $500? Sure. $400? Yeah. Everything north of this? Can't happen. It's a price ceiling. Over here it's a price floor. $10 and up is fine. Price ceiling, $600 and down, fine. See the difference? Here, demand exceeds supply. In this instance, demand is bigger, farther away from the axis, than supply. When there is more demand than supply, what do we call that? There's demand, people want it, they want to buy it, they want to have it, they're willing to pay for it. It's a shortage. Economics is easy, you only have to learn half of it. You get sick of hearing me say that. Surplus and shortage, opposites. Here, there's a shortage of apartments. People want them, people are willing to pay for them, they're not out there. Why aren't they out there? Madness. The law of supply still works. The law of supply still says if you tell people, listen, you're only going to get $600 for those new apartment buildings you're building, you're not going to be as eager to build them. They're not going to be as eager to build them. New York City implemented this and has had a problem with it for years. And now they can't get out of the policy. Downtown Louisville, if you walk through downtown Louisville, there's wonderful things. The subway on every third block, and then a Jimmy John's and a Quiznos, and any place you want for lunch, as long as it's a lunch meat sandwich. It's half of what they have downtown. It works down here. But then, look up at the second and third floor of these old buildings. A lot of these nice old brownstones that everybody's just head over heels about preserving and keeping. Look up at the second and third floor of them. The subway's on the first floor. What's on the second floor? Nothing. For the most part, they're vacant. They're empty. Why not turn them into apartments? Why not just convert them? Whoever owns that building and rents the bottom part out to the subway, why not turn the second one and rent it out to apartments? What's the harm? Make a little extra coin, right? Sometimes not. Sometimes not if you don't think you're going to be able to get enough out of it. Supply will be limited and there will be shortages in the market. Questions about surpluses and shortages? What if we were to institute a maximum wage? What if we were to institute a maximum wage? Is a maximum wage a price floor or a price ceiling?
Price ceiling.
It's a price ceiling. Many cases, when we try to go in and mess with things and create a price ceiling, what do we often create? Shortages. If we were to institute a maximum wage and say, listen, nobody needs more than $250,000 a year. That is madness. $250,000 a year, that's what you're going to make. We're just not going to let you have that giant big house up on the hill and 3 Tesla Model S's. $250,000 a year is enough for anybody. We're just not, you crazy rich bastards, you're not getting away with any more Mr. Burns. We're going to stop you. How could that create a shortage? Some people could move out of the country. What about highly skilled physicians? What do you think highly skilled physicians would choose to do?
Something else.
Something else maybe, yeah. What about your highly experienced physician who's like in his early 50s? And we say, you know, all right, maximum wage, that's it. You rich guys, you're taking advantage of everybody. What's the physician in his early 50s probably going to do next?
Retire.
He's going to retire, take his ball and go home. We've tried to do something good, and we've had adverse effects. We've had negative, unintended consequences. Put a star, underline it, and a circle around the words unintended consequences. It's very difficult to avoid the law of unintended consequences because we can't always predict exactly what markets are going to do. Markets respond in unpredictable ways. Markets can respond in unpredictable ways. But we know that when we go in and try to pass these policies and sort of tinker with an economy, we sometimes get it wrong, and we get it wrong more often than we get it right. Apartments in New York is an example. We talk about Canada, and everybody talks about how great Canada's healthcare system is. And it's all publicly funded and this and that. 80% of Canadians live within about a 2-hour drive of the border. Almost the entire country of Canada lives right on the border with the U.S. Almost the entire country. And they do effectively say, listen, if you're a physician and you're this kind of physician, this is pretty much what you're going to get paid. This is what you're going to make in Canada for this year. What do we see Canadian doctors tend to do? Anybody know?
They have businesses in the U.S.
They head south, yeah.
They live in Canada and then travel.
Or they'll spend they'll be in Canada up until about April. And then they'll come south and make the rest of their money. People respond in different ways, and there's always unintended consequences. One of my favorite sayings about the minimum wage is, that's fantastic. You can pass a law that forces people to pay more, but you can't pass a law that makes them turn the air conditioner on. You can't pass a law that says we're not going to fire the 4 cashiers and put in more self-serve checkout lanes, which is what we see happen. I'm absolutely convinced that if this happens for fast food workers, all they're going to do is turn the terminal around. And we'll type in our own order. I'm 100% convinced of it. Some fast food restaurants have experimented with outsourcing the drive-thru. Anybody ever heard that? You go to the drive-thru, you pull up and you say, I want a number 5, ketchup only, no pickles, chocolate shake. You expect that that's someone standing in the restaurant with a headset on, right? Why could it not be a room full of call center people? With the technology we have, why could it not be a room full of call center people who are going, okay, type, 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 and it pops up on their screen. And we eliminate that person.
That's kind of brilliant.
What's that?
Kind of brilliant.
Yeah, well, they've experimented with it. It's not mine. I don't get credit for that. But they've experimented with it. People sitting in a call center and just order after order after order from all over the country. Just boom, boom, boom.
But what drives the drive-through is being able to get the order out. And
Yeah.
it would be different if the person that's receiving the order only did that, but that person normally does multiple things to get the order out.
Right, they're special. Right, they're not just typing in the computer. That's a whole different level of specialization.
Here with Apple Pay, they even have to do cash anymore.
Yeah.
Swipe your card.
I mean, the Apple Pay thing that they've come up with that was announced yesterday. The Apple Pay, where you just like tap your iPhone, your iWatch or something, and you just pay for the thing by waving your watch in front of the thing. Because that sounds fantastic. You know that Apple just like was in the news for like a privacy leak of very, very private information. Then 2 weeks later, they're like, just give us your finance and health information too. Don't you just wish we could take care of that for you as well? No, I don't. Let's do some more examples. I've done increases and decreases in demand. I've done price floors and price ceilings. Price and quantity, what color is these? Green, orange. D, demand curve slope downward. Supply curve still slope upward. We will do Pure cane sugar. Pure cane sugar. At a certain price, we have a certain quantity of sugar, which is demanded in the marketplace. What we're going to do now is, instead of putting on price floors and price ceilings, we're going to limit the supply. Here's what we do have: a certain quantity Q1 at a certain price P1. What we're going to do is artificially limit supply. We're going to say you can only sell this much sugar, that's it. Well, that's what's going to be sold. If we go up here and we find our spots on our graph, this quantity of sugar is going to be sold. We've limited it. But what's happened to the price? We were at this price, but now we see we're on a different point in our demand. By limiting the quantity, we've raised the price. Same thing that happened over here when we put in price floors, right? I've just shifted the graph, I've turned it. We've limited supply and we've raised the price. Why do I pick sugar? Because we did this. About 15 years ago, we did this. Where's sugar come from? Anybody? Not the bottom shelf at Kroger in the stupid paper bag. You walk along the aisle in the baking aisle, and what do you get every single time? Right? Sugar everywhere. We've got a rover crawling around on Mars, the size of a Honda, sending pictures back. And we can't find a better way to put sugar in a grocery than a paper sack that busts in my Hyundai before I get it home. We're going to put a robot on Mars and I'm still carrying sugar in a paper sack? It's ridiculous. Somebody get on that. Sugar is grown out of sugar cane on large farms and plantations from either sugar cane or sugar beets, which they then process and distill and get the sugar out of these high sugar plants, sugar cane and sugar beets. Where are sugar cane farms?
Cuba.
Yeah, I'm on.
South
Yeah,
America.
Caribbean, island countries, the far south. Takes a long growing season. It's a very hardy plant. So it looks like bamboo if you've ever seen it. What's that?
I'm sorry.
It looks like bamboo if you've ever seen it. Big, hardy, woody plant. Takes a long time to grow, can have a long growing season.
You can eat them though.
Oh yeah, the sugar cane? Oh yeah, we used to get them and just sit there and suck on them. Yeah, you'd see kids just hack them down. You can sit there and suck on it. It's like candy. They're the best. If you've never had one of these, you've never been to certain parts of the Caribbean. But we said, listen, we've got all these U.S. sugar beet farmers, and we're importing all this sugar from other countries, and it's hurting our domestic farmers. And we want to be good for the farmer. We want to help the American farmer. So we instituted what's called a quota. We said this much, no more. This much sugar is all we can import into the country. No more. Okay, that's fine. We can pass a law that says that, and we can not let people bring sugar into the country. Yeah, we did. And the markets predicted, exactly like anyone who's had the benefit of their first economics class, the price for sugar went up. And in some cases, it went up dramatically. And in this case, afterward, what some people did, because of the law of unintended consequences, like you wrote down, circled, underlined, and put a star next to it. Because of the law of unintended consequences, people went and looked for substitute goods for sugar, because the price went up. Maybe now they don't want sugar anymore. If we put our road tax on our cars and we make driving much more expensive, what might some of us decide to do instead of driving? I heard it.
Public transportation,
Yeah, we might ride our bikes more if we institute our $1,000 road tax we talked about. cycling is a substitute for driving. What was the substitute for sugar we found?
Sweet and low.
No, that's been around for a lot longer.
Oh.
And sweet and low's too expensive to put in like, I heard it?
Splenda.
Oh no, not one of those. There you go. Who was it? I heard it up here. High fructose corn syrup,
Which is actually worse for you.
which is considerably worse for you. And instead of putting sugar in things like your Pepsi and your Coke and your jelly and your jam and every damn thing in the marketplace, instead of using sugar, what did we substitute to because we drove up the price? High fructose corn syrup. Markets have unintended consequences. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen when you start messing with these rules. One of my favorite sayings is you can do all this stuff. You can protect workers from low wages, and you can protect people from greedy landlords charging too much, and you can protect American farmers from low-cost sugar imports from other countries. But you have no idea that it's impossible to predict what's going to happen next. None of us, especially economists and meteorologists, are very good at telling the future, and we don't necessarily know what these policies might entail. We like to think they happen in a vacuum. We like to think that we raise the minimum wage to $10 and everyone who owns a McDonald's just goes, oh, dang it, well, okay, here you go. Guess I'll just fork it over and that'll be that. It's not always the case. We'd like to think that we can protect the American farmer and say, listen, all these General Mills and everyone else who makes food, we're just going to need you to pay, oh, darn it. Guess I'll just fork over the extra money and pay more for sugar. That'll be fine. It doesn't always work that way. There's unintended consequences of things. This is the case when markets are functioning effectively, when markets are working well. When markets are working well, all of these require that prices and quantity be allowed to go up and down. Right? They allow that prices can change, that quantity can change, that people can make decisions. People can't resist going in and just messing with markets a little bit. Why did we pass a law a couple of years ago that said you absolutely had to buy health insurance? If you don't have it, you can be fined. You can be fined for not owning health insurance. First time in the world, first time in the history of the U.S. that we passed a law mandating that you buy something. You must buy it. You don't absolutely have to buy car insurance because you don't absolutely have to drive a car. But we've mandated that everybody in the country has to have health insurance. Why? It's a way to keep the price down. It's a way to keep the price down for everybody. The only way to keep that price down is to ensure that everybody has to buy it one way or another.
Well, they should ensure that everyone takes it too. Every doctor's office, because you could have health insurance, but not every hospital or doctor's office is going to accept it.
Oh, believe me, I know very full and well. I work for a Medicaid provider. We have 320,000 members, and some of them can't find a doctor or a hospital in their home county.
I have VHM, and no one ever takes
Yeah,
it.
there'll be a lot of people who just say, I won't take it. There's physicians out there who just say, I won't take any Medicaid patients, and that's that. Could we force the physicians to take everyone's insurance? Pass that law. Do you
They'll
think
come
it's
up
going-
with a workaround.
Yeah, do you think it's going to have unintended consequences? Yes. I think it'll have serious unintended consequences.
That's what I was thinking of when you were talking about unintended consequences, because with Papa John's and John Snyder, when they said that you have to give your employees health insurance, he was like, I'm just gonna cut their hours.
He's entirely honest, yeah.
Yeah, so instead of giving them health insurance, instead they lost 2
Yeah.
hours a week.
He was entirely honest. Papa John's got into serious trouble about this. They asked him on the investor phone call, Goldman Sachs and all the investors and things on the line, what's going to be the impact of these healthcare laws? And he says, well, we're probably going to have more part-time employees and we're going to cut people's hours. And people went, oh my God, he's a monster. Or he said, yeah, it might make the pizza cost like an extra quarter a piece. So we don't really want to do that. We like the price point we're at. So we're probably just going to cut more people's hours. People went, what a greedy monster. Well, no, he's just responding just like we would predict. Anyone who's had their first econ class knows that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be unintended consequences all the time. All the time. In order for these to happen, markets have to work effectively, all right? Markets have to, prices have to be able to change. People have to be able to change the amount they can and will buy. Any questions about these examples? I've got one more thing I want to cover real fast. I'll talk more about efficient markets and how markets work and how efficient markets can be, what it takes for markets to be efficient.
I have a question about your example.
Yeah.
So, if your example was like somewhat like raising it a quarter versus cutting people's hours,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you just want to make more money and then keep the people who work for his company?
If the price goes up, what else happens?
You might lose sales, but
You might lose some sales.
wouldn't it like possibly even out too? Because everybody,
That's why we hire economists.
Plus you have to pay for insurance.
But let me ask,
yeah.
but let me ask you this. Do you think that the Papa John's Corporation is dumb? Do you think that right now, if they could raise the price on average by 25 cents and make more money by doing it, do you think they would have already done that? I think they probably would have already done that. I think they're right at where they want to be right now. And they don't want to be any higher, and they don't particularly want to be any lower. There is a certain price point, given that these aren't straight lines, they're curves. And when you take intermediate micro, you'll learn to figure out where your sweet spot of this price point is, that you maximize your price and you maximize your quantity. And you can take, if you've had calculus, you can take the derivative of this curve and find where the slope approaches a certain point and know that that's where you want to set your sales price. And if you go into graduate school in economics, you will do that type of math. And you'll look at these functions, it's called a Cobb-Douglas function, and you'll calculate where your maximum potential, your maximum earnings of your quantity and your price are. It can be done, but I think they've done that math. And I don't think they want to increase their price. I think it's still they'll cut hours. And they probably have. Everyone else has too, by the way. Papa John's isn't unique. He just said it on the phone. Your people, at this point, I always get someone in the back that goes, not the good people, not the fine people. Louisville Congressman is John Yarmouth. He advocates strongly for a much higher minimum wage to anyone who will stand still and listen. John Yarmouth founded Leo, the local rag in Louisville that lists all the band listings. He sold it several years ago to Southcom Communications, and they tanked it. They did a pretty poor job of running it. So his son just bought it back. So it's still in the Yarmouth family. His son, just about 3 weeks ago, bought the paper back. So our congressman, who advocates vociferously for a much higher minimum wage, sold it. His son buys it back into the family. And the first thing they did was what? Anybody remember?
Fired people.
They fired who?
Like two of their top people.
Everyone.
Yeah. Well, some
They
people.
fired everybody. They basically let the staff go. Why?
It's different now.
Market's different now. Sarah had been there for 15 years. They actually fired her on her 15-year anniversary. I know, horrible thing to do. But the good people won't do this kind of thing. Fired the whole staff. Why? The paper's free, folks. It's laying at the grocery. Are they afraid people aren't going to buy it? If they could fire the people who have been there for 20 years and get brand new out-of-college writers and save a whole bunch of money, I think they did. I think that's precisely what they did. We can call our congressman and his family a lot of different things, but stupid is not among them. There are people who would write for Leo for free to see their name in print. And now I think some of them are. They're not stupid. Markets react in many different ways. Even the good people on our side, who are on our team, and have the bumper stickers that we have and watch the news programs that we watch, tend to react in very predictable ways. I do it that way because whatever news program you watch, you assume that your people are right and everyone else is an idiot. People who have your bumper stickers are right and everyone else is an idiot. I have one quick thing to go over, then I'll let you out of here. I include this in this lecture just because there's nowhere else to put it. 3 different types of goods. Normal goods respond like we think to supply and demand. Normal goods are, the surprise of no one, normal. They react in ways that we think. For a normal good, as the price goes up, the amount that we want, quantity demanded, goes down. It's a D. Therefore, as our income goes up, for a normal good, as our income goes up and we make more money, we want more of it. I enjoy eating pizza. Personally, I prefer Papa John's. If my income went up, I would probably eat more of it. I enjoy pizza Sunday. On Sundays, I don't feel like cooking. I typically order a pizza. They know this about me. I didn't order it for a couple weeks. They sent me a coupon. Give me back. As my income goes up, I would probably not order on Sunday. I would order another day. Normal goods. Act like we expect them to. Inferior goods. Inferior goods. In economics, the word inferior means something different than what you're used to. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's crappy and not worth much. Inferior goods are those for which, if my income goes up, my demand for the good will go down. I always hear the same 2 examples, so somebody dig deep and give me one that's not one of those 2. Dig deep. Not you. Aren't you wishing you kept all your notes from last semester now? Curses.
The only one I can think of is when you told me, the one that's generic, for like, not brand name, but like for generic stuff.
Generic brand, generic good, generic grocery things. It's not one of the 2 I typically hear. It's not one of the 2 I typically hear, but I'll agree with it. Like the generic off-brand, the Walgreens brand, whatever it is you're getting. I think more people might buy as their income goes up. What do you got?
I would say ramen.
That's one of the 2 that I always hear. It's a great one. Ramen noodles, 50 cents a pack if you buy the nice ones. 50 if you're the ones with the big packet in it, yeah, that might have seen a vegetable at some point or another. As your income goes up dramatically, would you buy and eat more and more of it? Probably not. You would rather have other things. The other one I hear all the time is Taco Bell, right? You're like, man, I got $4. It's Taco Bell. But if you got $40, you going to Taco Bell? No. You're going to BK. All right? Inferior goods. Not necessarily low quality. Sometimes it turns out that they might be. But we consider these inferior goods. As your income goes up, your demand for them goes down. The last one we look at is what we call Giffen goods. And these are goods for which, as the price goes up, theoretically, the demand could go up. The more expensive it is, the more people want it. The more expensive it is, the more people want it. The theoretical good that breaks the law of demand.
Semi-precious stones?
High fashion accessories.
Okay, yeah.
Coach handbags. Are Coach handbags that much better made than all the other ones?
Ew, no.
The answer to that is they're really well made. They're really, really well made things. But is that why people are buying them? Because they're so high quality? No. Why are they buying them? We know that they're very prestigious. Rolex watches. Is it because the Rolex keeps time so much better than everything else? You have to be that accurate. It's waterproof to 800 meters. Or are you really going diving and be like, oh crap, dude, I got a meeting? No. All right, we're buying it because it's a status symbol. They're called gift interest. They're called gift interest. Any questions on those three things? I fit them in at the end of this lecture because there's really nowhere else to fit them in. Okay, thank you for your attention. I will see you Monday. Chapter 2, read it, love it.